Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Sean back with another video. Today we're gonna get into a couple theories. I told you that last chapter, man, it got the theories flowing. So right off the bat, I'm gonna just let you know this video is going to be about specifically the devil fruit that the world government was discussing at the end of the last chapter, right? So I'm gonna say right now, I'll just give you a list of the devil fruits that I think they might be talking about, and then I'll go down the list of why. Number one, Luffy. I think that's obvious. He's the main character. Anything that involves the destruction of the world government, I think Luffy is always suspect number one. So obviously Luffy has to be in this. Number two, Tama. This is something that I've seen a couple people talk about. I personally don't fall on this side, but I will say it's interesting and worth mentioning. Number three is Yamato. We really don't know a whole lot about Yamato's devil fruit yet, so I think you kind of just got to put her in there by default. Number four is Kaido, and this is something that I haven't seen a whole lot of people mention, but I definitely think Kaido is worth putting in there, and there's going to be some other reasons why that we're going to make this make a little bit more sense. And then finally, number five is going to be Toki. I think the reason Toki should be put in there is I think it's the most logical option. Okay, it just makes sense based on the exact conversation that the Gorosei were having. So first off, we're gonna start with Luffy. Why do I think they might have been talking about Luffy's Gamu Gamu no Mi? So the first reason why is because obviously Luffy hasn't actually awakened his devil fruit yet. Now, a lot of people interpreted that sentence that the Gorosei said. I don't know which person of which one of them said it, but they said that devil fruit hasn't awakened for centuries. A lot of people have been interpreting that two different ways. Either A, nobody's eaten the devil fruit in centuries, or B, the devil fruit has been eaten but nobody's actually awakened it, since we now know about devil fruit awakenings in centuries. And we know Luffy's devil fruit is not awakened. We also don't know who had it before him, but we do know it was in government custody, and Who's Who actually was pretty much fired, and I'm pretty sure they're trying to kill him because he was the one who was escorting the Gamu Gamu no Mi when it was stolen by the red hair pirates before Luffy eventually ate it. So clearly the Gamu Gamu no Mi is important to somebody within the world government, whether they just owned it and they were, they found it somewhere in the East Blue and they were transporting it, or if it actually was important to the world government for whatever reason. Either way, they actually had it on a government ship. Who's Who I think at the time was still a Cypher Pole agent, was escorting the ship, and they were defeated by the red hair pirates and the fruit was stolen. It was important enough that Who's Who lost his job over that, which is interesting because Rob Lucci, also a Cypher Pole agent, was defeated by Luffy and Enies Lobby was destroyed, and Lucci's still with Cypher Pole. In fact, I think he actually might have gotten promoted. So it's interesting that Who's Who loses one devil fruit and he's exiled from the world government, where Lucci, a whole government facility is destroyed on his watch and he gets a promotion. So I think that's an interesting coincidence. Also, there's been some speculation that Luffy's devil fruit is a special paramecia, much like Katakuri's. And the reason why is because, as far as we know, Luffy and Katakuri are the only two devil fruit users, the only specifically paramecia devil fruit users who we've seen, who their devil fruit has actually affected their specific body, right? And it's not affecting it in a way of they can perform some type of task. Their body has actually turned into a specific substance, right? Buggy's fruit affects his body, but it just makes it so you can't cut him. Magellan's fruit affects his body, but it makes his body produce poison, right? He secretes poison from out of his body in huge amounts, but his body itself is not made of poison. Luffy is actually made of rubber. His body has actually taken on the physical properties of rubber. Katakuri's body has actually taken on the physical properties of mochi, and that's something that we've only seen where a character's body actually takes on the properties of the devil fruit that they ate. That's something that we've only seen in Logia's, right? But Logia's, if you're following the trend, it seems like the rule of Logia devil fruits is that they're natural substances. So for instance, Ace was fire, Smoker is smoke, Akainu is lava. So they're all natural substances. Rubber is not really a natural substance. It occurs in nature, but it has to be refined and worked with to turn it into the rubber that we know, like rubber bands and things like that. Same thing with mochi. Mochi is made of natural things, but it's a food. It has to actually be made. It's something that you have to work with and sort of cultivate yourself to turn it into what it finally is, the finished product, which is mochi. So I think the differentiating factor between a logia and a special paramecia is, number one, whether it's a natural substance, and number two, whether your body actually turns into the thing or not. Because as we saw, there's been other devil fruit users who are able to create naturally occurring substances, like Mr. 3, who create wax, but his body itself isn't wax. So I think what makes a special paramecia is that those two specific abilities, being able to manipulate your own body with the properties of some type of man-made substance, and also your body actually taking on those properties of that substance without you having to do anything. So with Katakuri and Luffy being the only two special paramecias that we've seen thus far, we already know how powerful Katakuri's devil fruit is. We've seen how powerful Luffy's devil fruit is. And I think what makes special paramecias so powerful is that it creates a whole huge variety of ways that you can now use the power. Aokiji can create ice, but he can't turn other things into ice. He can freeze them, but that's not the same thing as turning it into ice. Whereas somebody like Doflamingo, when he awakened his devil fruit, he could actually turn other things into string. I think Katakuri, his devil fruit was also awakened for that same reason. I think if Katakuri's devil fruit wasn't awakened, he would be able to do some of the same things as Luffy, where his body is actually made of mochi and he can create mochi and secrete it, you know, from his body. But he wouldn't be able to turn other things into mochi like we saw him do in that fight against Luffy back in Whole Cake Island. I think once Luffy awakens his devil fruit, the ability to turn other things into rubber is going to be huge. Now, is that scary enough to worry the world government? Maybe, maybe not. But remember, the world government isn't worried about things just because they're powerful. They're worried about things because of the effect that they can have on the world. So, for instance, you look at Ace. Why was Ace publicly executed? Most other pirates go to Enies Lobby, they get sentenced, they go to Impel Down, or they just get executed at Enies Lobby. Ace had a public execution. Part of it was his connection to Whitebeard. They wanted to draw out the Whitebeard pirates and defeat them. But also part of it was because he was Gold Roger's son. And they wanted to make a spectacle out of it. They wanted to make an example out of him. They wanted to show the world that we are killing off the Pirate King and his whole bloodline. It's the same reason why they hunted down Ace in the first place when he was first born. Why they killed who knows how many women and children who were suspicious, who they thought might have been the Pirate King's family. So I think that it could be a possibility that the government, specifically the Gorosei, are talking about this devil fruit not because it's strong, but because of the connection that it has to the Void Century, and maybe even specifically Joy Boy. So that's Luffy. Number 2 is Tama. So I think Tama is the little bit more obvious, sort of on the nose assumption. A lot of people are thinking Tama because of Zunisha. Because of the way that Zunisha was shown in that panel while the Gorosei was having that conversation, a lot of people are automatically assuming that those two things are connected, which they very well might be. I wouldn't put it past Oda to do something that on the nose, but I also wouldn't put it past him to kind of throw Zunisha in as a bit of a red herring. Same way that he kind of threw in Ace and Luffy being brothers as a bit of a red herring, right? To distract us from the fact that Ace was actually Goldie Roger's son, or to throw us off from that possibility. The reason why people think Tama and Zunisha might be connected is simply because Zunisha is an animal, and we know that Tama's devil fruit allows her to control animals. Now, another reason why it could be a possibility is because, again, because of the possibilities of devil fruit awakenings, we have no idea what Tama would be able to do once she awakens her fruit. I mean, it might be nothing all that serious. It might be something crazy, right? She might give animals intelligence. Who knows? As of right now, she gives them a piece of her cheek. She takes off a little kibi dango, and she essentially not gains control, but she gains the animals' favor, right? They love her. They want to do whatever they can to help her. They want to do whatever she says, right? They basically are at her command. once she awakens that fruit, who knows what she'll be able to do with a certain animal under her control, a certain animal like Zunisha. Now, I personally don't think it's Tama's fruit that they're talking about. And the reason why is because Zunisha's already shown intelligence. Zunisha's already shown that Zunisha's already shown that it has a certain level of intelligence, and also has had this intelligence for a very long time. And as we know about devil fruits, when the devil fruit user dies, the fruit gets reincarnated into someone else. So Zunisha has been walking around for who knows how long, and let's say the previous user of the devil fruit that Tama has gave it a dango, and then gave it or awakened the fruit even, and gave it a dango and said, hey, I want you to walk to this place. Once that person died, there's no guarantee that that order would still need to be fulfilled by Zunisha, because technically the power of that fruit should have worn off by now, because the fruit has already been eaten, destroyed, and reincarnated somewhere else, probably many times by the time it has gotten to Tama. So I don't really see any reason why Tama's devil fruit and Zunisha would be connected in that way, because it's been so long since Zunisha was given that order that I doubt it's related to a specific devil fruit, because of the cycle of devil fruits, right? Because of the fact that once a person dies, the fruit gets reincarnated somewhere else. So for that reason, I don't really think it's Tama. There's probably more reasons to dive into it. I do think it's interesting. Obviously, whoever they're talking about is in Wano. In my opinion, whoever the government is talking about is in Wano. And the reason why is because if the fruit hasn't been awakened in years or in centuries, it would imply that either A, nobody's eaten it, B, the people who have eaten it haven't actually had it long enough to even try and awaken it, or C, whoever had it simply didn't even know that they could awaken it. And to me, those three scenarios all say Wano. And the reason why is because Wano is an isolated nation, and as we know, they don't really have many devil fruits in Wano. I mean, we've seen plenty of people with devil fruits in Wano, but they're not actually from Wano. The only people who are from Wano who we've seen have devil fruits, they didn't even know what they had. I mean, Kanjuro, Kinemon, Tama, Shinobu, they didn't even know what they had. They didn't even know that they had eaten devil fruits. They were assuming that it was like magic or sorcery or something like that. They had no idea what they were doing. So it could be possible, or not even it could be, I think it's most likely that if the government is talking about a devil fruit that hasn't been awakened in centuries, it would probably be in a place where it keeps getting eaten and reincarnated amongst a population of people that don't know what devil fruits are and don't know that they even could awaken it. The second interpretation, which is that the fruit hasn't been eaten in centuries, is also a possibility, because as we know, like I said, Wano is isolated. So it could just be that they have no idea that whoever has the fruit is in Wano and alive. So they don't really get much news in and out of Wano. So it could be that they simply don't know. Right, so I think that's the whole concept of the Gorosei not knowing about a devil fruit being awakened in centuries, or it possibly not being awakened in centuries. That really narrows down the possible locations of this devil fruit to only isolated nations. And as far as we know, Wano is one of the only isolated nations in all of One Piece. But as I said before, I don't think it's Tama. So now the third option that I said was Yamato. Some people are going to agree, some people are going to disagree. I think the reason why a lot of people are saying Yamato is simply because we know the least about her fruit. Like, it kind of just popped up. A lot of people aren't really all that familiar with Japanese mythology to know exactly what all the powers of this mythical zone that she has are. So we kind of just, it's kind of just an assumption that once she awakens this devil fruit, it might be some other mythical powers that, you know, come along with it that are super strong and the government doesn't know about. However, the problem is you have to wonder how Kaido came about that devil fruit, right? Now, it could very well be that the devil fruit was in Wano. Like I was saying earlier, it could be that, you know, the government didn't think anybody had it or had awakened this fruit for centuries because it was in an isolated nation. That would also explain partially why Kaido chose to come to Wano in the first place, other than the fact that they had Sea Prism Stone and amazing craftsmen and manufacturers and things like that there. But that would shed a huge light on why Kaido chose Wano specifically. It could have been for that devil fruit, or for a poneglyph, which also might be there. But I think a more reasonable option would be that Kaido simply chose Wano because it wasn't affiliated with the world government. So by going there and taking it over, he wouldn't have to worry about the government and the Marines coming to basically retaliate or liberate the island from his rule. Once he had it, there was nobody going to come and try and stop him from staying there and claiming it as his territory. But again, it could very well be for a multitude of different reasons, including the poneglyphs. I'm sure that was probably a huge bonus. I'm sure that might have been a huge reason why he chose to come to Wano, but why he chose to stay in Wano, it's very few reasons that you could point to other than just because he knew nobody else was coming to claim it. Yamato's Devil Fruit nonetheless is interesting, and I think it should be considered as an option because we know so little about it. I think you can't take it off the table, and once I'm able to do some more research, or maybe a video comes out or something like that on the nature of the mythical creature that her Devil Fruit is based on comes out, and we can maybe assume or theorize some of the other powers that Yamato might achieve once she awakens the fruit, then I think it'll become more of a solid option. But right now, Yamato's Devil Fruit is only on the table because there's not enough information to take it off. So that's Yamato. Now, Kaido. Some people might be kind of surprised by this. Kaido's on the table because I have a theory regarding Kaido's Devil Fruit that I think is actually pretty closely related to Zunisha as well. As we know, the three ancient weapons, Poseidon, Uranus, and Pluton, all relate in some way to the sea. Poseidon rules the creatures under the sea. Pluton is a warship that sails on the sea. Uranus, I'm assuming, is something that exists either in the air or grows from the ground upwards. Something that relates to the sky in some way. And the reason why is not just because of the nature of the One Piece world, how there's such a lack of flying machines, and flight in general is a huge advantage. Also because of the location of the poneglyphs that actually talk about these things. So you found a poneglyph about a warship to sail in the ocean in the middle of a desert. The poneglyph that described Poseidon was found in Skypiea. You had a island, I believe 10,000 meters in the sky is Skypiea, that talks about an ancient weapon that exists in Fishman Island 10,000 meters below the sea. So there's sort of a theme of opposites here. So I think when it comes to Uranus, it's going to relate to a specific person, either for their lineage or because of a power that they have. And I think Kaido is the perfect person that fit that description. Momonosuke is there as well, but Momonosuke's connection I think is more due to him just being a Kozuki, whereas Kaido, he's such a mystery. We don't know what race Kaido is. We don't know if he's just human or if he's some type of Oni. A lot of people assume that he is some type of Oni because of the horn. Everybody else in the Beast Pirates, we've seen that they're mostly just wearing costumes, like those horns can kind of come off. Kaido's, they don't really seem to come off. And same thing goes with Yamato. So we can assume that those horns are actually hereditary. They're actually something that has to do with their species just in general. Kaido's Devil Fruit is crazy for multiple reasons. Number one, he can fly. Number two, he's one of the only Devil Fruit users that we've seen who's able to actually lift other things without having to actually use his body to do it. Those flame clouds that the dragons create, that is a huge advantage. You can imagine the type of things that Kaido can transport just using his flame clouds. He's lifting Onigashima right now and he's not even paying attention. He's fighting Luffy. That's actually a pretty big deal. So I think the Devil Fruit that Kaido has is actually really OP. Kaido was given a Devil Fruit from Big Mom. She said that he had the mythical fish fruit, all right? Something like that. Which obviously would make sense why a fish Devil Fruit would have to be mythical, because you see Oda's kind of walking a fine line here with this whole weakness to water thing. That's why there hasn't been any water Logia types, because that would kind of negate the whole issue of not being able to swim. So it would make sense that if there is a mythical fish fruit, it doesn't actually turn you into a fish. It probably does turn you into something else. But I don't know if it specifically turns you into a dragon. Unless Kaido is an awakened zone. This relates back to what the Gorosei were talking about of the Devil Fruit not awakening in centuries. It could be that the Gorosei are talking about a Devil Fruit that has been in circulation But much like Brook's fruit, you don't really know what it is until you need to use it. I think the fish fruit that Kaido ate was probably seen as sort of a dud, or as something that wasn't really all that useful until you awaken it and you become a dragon, right? Because now it's on a whole nother level. We've seen the things that Kaido can do, and I think that applies to Momonosuke as well, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But for the most part, I think what makes Kaido's devil fruit specifically so OP isn't just that he's a dragon, right? But it's also the things that come along with his awakening, the other powers that he has as an awakened dragon. I think Kaido and his devil fruit, the dragon devil fruit, enables him to control Zunisha. That would mean that the devil fruit itself would be Uranus, that the devil fruit that Kaido has is the strongest zone devil fruit in existence, not just because it turns you into a dragon, not just because it enables you to lift whole islands without even paying attention, but because it gives you control over other creatures. Kaido is the king of the beasts. That's not just, in my opinion, the name that he's been given as the world's strongest creature. I think it's literally a side effect of his awakening his devil fruit and becoming a dragon. I think the dragon power gives him power over other ancient creatures. I think that could possibly relate to Momonosuke and why he was able to give Zunisha the order. Now, obviously, him being a Kozuki is a big factor as well, because we know the Kozuki clan has super deep ties to the Minks and Zou in general, right? But if you think about it, Oden was on Zou as well. I don't really remember, I might have to go back and look at it, but I don't remember Oden having that same sort of vibe, like he was super, nervous or anything like that, or that Zunisha was talking to him while he was on Zou. And at the time, Oden was head of the Kozuki clan. So it doesn't make sense why Oden would be able to step foot on Zou without feeling the same sort of ominous feeling that Momonosuke had, or being able to communicate with Zunisha the way Momonosuke did while he was on Zou. I think that's something that relates to Momonosuke's devil fruit, because his devil fruit is a copy of Kaido. And much like Kaido's devil fruit, if what I'm saying is true, that the fish fruit is virtually unusable until you awaken it and become a dragon, that could also explain why Vegapunk and Caesar Clown felt like that copy that they made of Kaido's devil fruit was defective and was a dud, because they probably didn't know that it won't do anything until you awaken it, which is why now we see Momonosuke as a dragon, and he's super powerful. He has almost the same powers as Kaido. Thus far, we've seen him do almost everything that Kaido can do. We've seen him turn into a dragon. We've seen him generate flame clouds. He's even able to use Kaido's flame clouds. Like he's manipulating Kaido's flame clouds. So as of right now, maybe it's because he can't use Bora Breath, but as of right now, I'm not seeing any reason why the world government, or why Vegapunk specifically, would think that devil fruit was a dud. It seems like it's working perfectly fine. So that is why I put Kaido in there. And I guess sort of in a way you could throw Momonosuke in there as well. But for me, Kaido is his devil fruit, his dragon devil fruit is so powerful that I feel like it has to be considered. And I really feel like we haven't seen all that it's capable of yet. And until we get more background and more history on some of these mythical zones, I don't think you can really rule any of them out, except maybe Katarina Devon. I think hers is pretty straightforward. But anyway, moving on. Now, the last devil fruit on this list, which I think is actually the most likely, more likely than Kaido's, more likely than Luffy's, more likely than Tama's, anybody's. I think the most likely devil fruit that the Gorosei are talking about is Lady Toki's. And the reason why is because the Gorosei said that the world government gave the devil fruit a different name. Now, for the most part, that should technically be impossible. As we've already seen, when a devil fruit user eats the devil fruit, they already know, for the most part, what it's called, right? It just kind of comes to them. It just, as soon as they eat it, they're like, oh, this is what I have now. They may not necessarily know how to use it, but they know what it is, at least. So the only way that the world government gave a devil fruit a different name, and that name stuck for centuries, is if A, nobody's had it, or B, the person who did have it didn't know anything about what the world government was doing because they were somewhere where the world government doesn't exist. That only really means Wano. And since we know Lady Toki came from the Void Century and jumped forward in time all the way to basically present day, minus 20 years, that would mean that technically that devil fruit hasn't been in rotation. The cycle hasn't been going of a person eating the devil fruit and dying and it getting reincarnated. It hasn't been in rotation since the Void Century. So that would explain why the Gorosei feel like the devil fruit hasn't awakened in centuries. Also, we don't know if Lady Toki's fruit was awakened. We know that she ate it, and we know that she was able to leap forward with virtually no limit until she eventually got to the point where she met Odin and decided to stay, and she made it to Wano. But we don't know if there's anything else that the fruit could do. We also don't know if it awakens, if it possibly enables you to go backwards in time. That's a theory that's been out there for a little bit, is that, you know, Lady Toki said, I can only go forward or send other things forward in time. I can't go back. Well, if she was awakened and that was what she came to, that was the conclusion she came to, then okay, whatever. But if she wasn't awakened, there's a very possibility that an awakened Toki Toki no Mi user could actually go back in time or just send things back in time, which would be a huge threat to the world government. Because if you could take somebody like Kaido or Luffy or somebody like that and send them back in time to the Void Century, that changes the tides of history for sure. Okay, and that would be a huge threat to the world government as a whole. So I think the Toki Toki no Mi is the prime suspect that the world government, specifically the Gorosei, are talking about here. And in addition to that, it's just the huge coincidence that Toki was from Wano. She didn't know, she wasn't in Wano when they found her, but she knew she was from Wano. She knew she had to get back to Wano. And I think that might have been something that she was told specifically because of the devil fruit that she had. That devil fruit should not leave Wano. Don't take it anywhere. Don't have any possibility that the world government could come and kill whoever has this fruit and get this fruit away from us. Keep the fruit in Wano. Keep Wano isolated. Keep the world government out. Right? The same way that Cobra is guarding that poneglyph, even though he's playing nice with the world government, even though he's a part of the world government, he goes to the Reverie. The Nefeltari family specifically, why they chose to stay in Alabasta instead of going to Marijois is specifically because they know the world government is the enemy and they're actually on the side of the ancient kingdom. And I think Wano, I think it's virtually a surefire thing that Wano is also an ally of the ancient kingdom, which is why they would be hoarding that devil fruit, keeping it away from the world government. I think it's very possible that that devil fruit was something that was sort of being protected by Wano from the world government, and Toki having it and jumping forward so far in time is why the world government thinks that it's gone. And it would also explain why Toki was essentially told to go to Wano in the first place when she jumped. Otherwise they would say, don't jump, just have the fruit in the basement or something like that. Don't let anybody eat it, don't touch it, just leave it there, right? But the fact that she was allowed to jump and told to go to Wano, it could be that there's some type of strategy going on to sort of keep this devil fruit out of the hands of the world government by keeping it moving, right? But because Lady Toki died, there's now this sort of issue of it's not jumping anymore, right? Which could be good because now Luffy's here, right? And he's supposed to be Joy Boy, so it could be perfectly fine. But there's still the issue of the fact that nobody knows where the fruit is. Lady Toki died, she died in Wano, so chances are the fruit is still in Wano, but we don't know where it is. Nobody's had it yet, nobody's used it, so on and so forth. So hopefully it's not in world government hands yet. I don't think it is, or else they wouldn't be having this conversation unless they're talking about a different devil fruit. But either way, man, that's my theory. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm going to be coming up with another video later, a more specific, more in-depth, detailed video about my theory on Uranus. But for right now, I'm just going to leave you guys with this. Please like and subscribe, and make sure you hit me up in the comment section about any other animes or mangas you want me to talk about or review or possibly even react to. I'm going to start doing reactions on this channel as well. But yeah, man, peace.